I'll repeat a few things for those who didn't see the first video. Here we have 10 albums that have left a negative legacy, that are considered, if not the worst, certainly among the worst of each respective artist. As for the artists themselves, I chose well-known names, so many of the albums you'll see are probably expected. Before I start presenting each album, I include its rating on Rate Your Music and Metal Archives so we can get an idea of what fans think about it. The general assessments and opinions you will hear are obviously purely personal. At the end of each section, I also give my verdict, which is my opinion in a brief and concise way. Let's see what happens then. For many years, it was the standard bad album in heavy metal. Often, even some bands themselves would say, "This is our turbo." The original idea was to make a double album titled Twin Turbos, which would have one disc with the most commercial tracks and one disc with the most aggressive heavy metal ones. In the end, the plan was rejected, and the band only released the commercial part and kept the tracks from the heavy metal part to release later. They decided to fully embrace their commercial side, with synthesizers, less powerful guitars, pop choruses, etc. They are essentially following the path of glam metal. The album starts with Turbo Lover. Turbo Lover, no matter what you say, is an awesome track. It has all the new elements they had decided to introduce, but it's so well written that these elements work perfectly. The second track, Locked In, is also quite good. It's based on an excellent riff, while the innovations help and highlight it. From then on, the album gradually declines in quality, reaching what I consider its lowest point, Rock You All Around the World. We're talking about third-rate glam metal here. From there on, we have a recovery, also gradual, especially in the last two songs. The dynamic Hot for Love and Reckless, which is probably the best track on the album, or if you prefer, the track that most resembles the old Judas Priest. I'd say we should stop using the album as an example of a bad release because, honestly, it's not nearly as bad as it's considered to be. In fact, some might argue that other Priest albums, Demolition anyone, are clearly worse. The band is trying new things, which were simply different from what they had accustomed us to, and yes, leaning toward the then already highly disliked glam metal scene. For most of the album, however, they do it honestly, always maintaining their own character. Therefore, an album with many common traits with Turbo in its approach to sound and style. The band had been one of the cornerstones of the new wave of British heavy metal, but times have changed. The movement had run its course, new genres had appeared on the horizon, and for a band that by nature can't turn to thrash, all roads lead to America and glam metal. The only problem is, it doesn't quite work like that. The group had just lost their bassist and one of their main composers, Steve Dawson, a loss from which it will take them a long time to recover. Frontman and former bassist Biff Byford will play bass on the album, although his sound will be very low in the mix, with the drums coming very forward. Overall, the production is mediocre and has nothing to do with that of the previous album, Innocence is No Excuse. Also, to be honest, the purely American style doesn't really suit staunch working-class Englishmen. The album starts with the typically anthemic title track, which we could even accept as a highlight. However, the real highlight and best song of the album is the next track, Battle Cry. Here you have the old Saxon making an appearance and teaching us how to play heavy metal. The third track, Waiting for the Night, is also really good. From there on, we have a clear drop in quality, with the album becoming repetitive and boring. The attempt to make something sleazier on You Ain't No Angel goes nowhere, and sounds completely out of place for a band like Saxon, while the unexpected appearance of Elton John, who at the time didn't quite have the status he does today, results in two songs that are impressive, but probably for the wrong reasons. The first, Party Till You Puke, is a clumsy attempt at writing a funny rock and roll song, giving us the album's weakest moment, while the ballad Northern Lady could be called decent. But ballads are certainly not what you buy a Saxon album for. The band will try it one more time on the similarly mediocre Destiny, and then return to what they do well, from which they will never stray again. It's the early 1990s, and Deep Purple are going to record their next album. Their iconic singer, Ian Gillan, has just been fired, and the band is looking for his replacement. They will consider Jimmy Jamison of Survivor, who won't be available, so they will end up with the old familiar Joe Lynn Turner, which will immediately lead people to predict the continuation and revival of the last period of Rainbow, the previous band of guitarist Ritchie Blackmore. And this prediction won't be far from the truth. The opening track, King of Dreams, seems to continue in the tradition of potential lightweight hits of the later Rainbow era, such as Stone Cold or Street of Dreams. The next track, The Cut Runs Deep, rekindles the hopes of those waiting to hear something heavier, with a truly sweeping main riff and a pop metal chorus that sticks in your head like gum on your shoe. Those who are waiting the heaviness to continue will probably be disappointed, as the only other track where Blackmore's guitar makes such a strong showing is the CD bonus, Slow Down Sister. It's more or less AWOL for the rest of the album. Among the other tracks, the bluesy Fire in the Basement and the quite radio-friendly Fortune Teller stand out. The ballad Love Conquers All is a rather awkward attempt by the band to capitalize on the success of various power ballads of the era, and, while vocally suitable for Turner, is unsuitable for a band with Deep Purple's history. The rest sounds like a collection of tracks cut from Foreigner and Chicago albums. I'd say that Roger Glover's production might also be to blame for this, as it makes the drums sound completely flat and removes any kind of punch from the sound. Obviously, no one wanted to hear Deep Purple playing AOR in 1990, and the album sold very little, although the tour went well, especially in Europe. Anyway, Turner and Blackmore have defended the album, with the latter saying he prefers it to Perfect Strangers. He's probably the only person on the entire planet who thinks so. When the San Francisco band released this album in 1997, everyone thought it was a collection of leftovers from Load. The band insisted that it wasn't like that. They had written the songs during the Load sessions. They just hadn't finished them, and that's why they were cut from it. Not because they weren't good. The truth is, there are quite a few differences compared to Load. The album isn't as alternative as its predecessor, and the band's image also seems to have been toned down after the backlash caused by their appearance for Load. So the album is dominated by southern-tinged or stoner-esque hard rock, with some occasional turns toward simple Black Album type mid-tempo metal. This style is occasionally broken up by things like the quite catchy Memory Remains, the Marianne Faithfull cameos, initially interesting but ultimately becomes annoying, or the country and western ballad Low Man's Lyric, which, if you ask me, is 100 times better than Mama Said from Load. We also have the album's opener and most well-known track, Fuel, a simple, silly, and quite fun song. The pop country sequel, Unforgiven 2, which no one asked for, and the somewhat interesting riff of Prince Charming. On the other hand, there's also a kind of southern redneck cover of Enter Sandman called Slither, or James Hetfield's attempt to channel his love for Nick Cave into Bad Seed, which obviously has nothing to do with Nick Cave. For me, the best moment of the album is Where the Wild Things Are, where the band truly experiments with ideas that work and creates something interesting from beginning to end. As for the rest of the tracks, whatever Metallica say, they really sound like leftovers from Load. They take the wrong things from it and severely limit what was innovative and interesting in that album. Practically speaking, with the few exceptions we mentioned above, it's like a watered-down, self-censored version of Load. This may be the Saint Anger of American hard rock. The band's legendary guitarist, Eddie Van Halen, with his addictions at a critical point, fires singer Sammy Hagar, limits bassist Michael Anthony to only 3 songs, and completely cuts him out of the backing vocals, a key characteristic of the band. Hires a new singer, Gary Cherone, formerly of Extreme, whom he puts in the studio without ever having toured with the band, and a producer, his friend Mike Post, who has no idea about hard rock and simply agrees with every decision he makes. As it would later be revealed, his brother and drummer Alex Van Halen was absent from the recordings due to personal issues. So Eddie recorded even the drums himself. No one knows why the album didn't come out as Eddie's solo album, something Anthony was sure of. As in Saint Anger, there are some very strange musical choices. Sharon's vocals are, to put it mildly, terrible. He's never been recorded so poorly in his entire career. Anthony's backing vocals are sorely missed. The sound is unusually dry, while Eddie's guitar sounds unjustifiably muddy and unclear. As for the songs, most of them are completely jumbled in what they propose, with ideas placed almost randomly next to each other. Also, all tracks are long, but without being catchy in the slightest, and without their flow justifying it. I would say the most successful song is Dirty Water Dog, with its almost disco rhythm and the verse taken verbatim from Bon Jovi's Livin' on a Prayer. From the rest, I could say Fire in the Hole and Ballad or the Bullet. Once is completely cringe in the way the electronic rhythm is combined with the vocals, while From Afar is simply awful, confused to the point of desperation. And of course, we come to the closer, the ballad How Many Say I, in which Eddie takes the lead vocals for the first and last time in his life, despite being off-key for almost the entire song. Still, the album has an almost charm in how strange and erratic it is. I would suggest you listen to it at least once, just out of curiosity.
What is real? Future real?
In late 1997, after the band, in the words of singer Blaze Bayley, had survived previous album X Factor, they entered the studio to write its follow-up, and decided to base it on 2 themes. The video game they were preparing called Ed Hunter, which would appear on the album's booklet artwork, and football, also due to the upcoming World Cup at the time, which is reflected in the title and the band's promo photos. I would say that someone's first reaction to all of this consists of 3 letters of the English alphabet, W, T, and F. Let's move on to the songs now. I think everyone knows The Klansman, and I'll just say this. No one touches Blaze on this track. As for Future Real, I prefer it to almost all of the last 3 Iron Maiden albums. Angel and the Gambler has a 70s vibe that the band never tried again, and it works. But for some inexplicable reason, Bailey repeats the chorus about 550 times. When Two Worlds Collide is also a remarkable track with interesting changes and melodic guitar lines, and it's no coincidence that Blaze still plays it in his live shows today. The ballad that closes the album is quite good and not cheesy at all. But okay, You don't buy an Iron Maiden album to listen to ballads. As for the remaining three tracks, they all have good ideas, but they all lose me at some point. Although the break at the end of Don't Look to the Eyes of a Stranger is quite good. I would say that one reason for that is the production, done by bassist Steve Harris himself, which gives an unusually weak, spineless result that doesn't fill the speakers as other albums by that band. I don't know what prompted this decision by the bassist. I don't know if he subconsciously decided to end the Bailey era and move on to something else. Anyway, the album is interesting. It has its moments and doesn't deserve the reputation it has built up over the years. That is,
Endorama comes to you. This is the end.
I've said it before and I'll keep saying it. The 90s were a very strange time for many beloved metal bands. The world seemed not to give a damn about them, and each one was trying to cope in their own way. The pioneers of wild, raw, Teutonic thrash, Creator, after experimenting with various things, from industrial to violent hardcore, conclude their experimental journey here, giving us what they had somewhat prepared us for on their previous album, Outcast. That is, a simpler and more melodic sound, over which the band's leader and frontman Mila Petrozza limits his characteristic shouting and attempts to sing, and where the overall impression leads in only one direction: gothic metal. Today, over 25 years later, the choice seems logical. This genre was at its peak at that time, especially in Europe, where most of the band's fans were based. Also, the overall atmosphere reflects the influence of guitarist Tommy Vetterli, formerly of Coroner, in both certain solos and the sometimes industrial vibe. The band's characteristic aggression is present in small doses, and essentially only in two tracks, Shadowland and Pandemonium. Everything else revolves around three axes of influence: Killing Joke, Depeche Mode, and especially, of course, Sisters of Mercy. In fact, there are three consecutive tracks that correspond one to these three influences: Chosen Few, Everlasting Flame, Passage to Babylon. Now, as a goth fan, I easily saw the similarity between the eponymous, incredibly catchy track, in which Tilo Wolff of Lacrimosa shares vocals with Petrozza, and the Sisters of Mercy's Temple of Love, or the bass line of Tyranny with another sister song, Lucretia, My Reflection. I have nothing bad to say about that. Everyone in gothic metal was doing similar things back then. Because I'm more of a fan of the gothic idiom than I am a Creator fanboy, I like them, but I prefer Sodom and Tankard. I don't mind this effort of theirs at all. It was done correctly, professionally, and without haste. However, I understand why their die-hard fans might have been disappointed. That's why they never tried anything remotely similar throughout the rest of their career.
To entertain you the best I can.
It's the album from which the decline in the quality of his records is considered to have begun. This is his first release as an entrepreneur, the organizer of the largest touring metal festival of the time. His first release since when, as I say, music had taken a back seat. The band accompanying him is excellent: Robert Trujillo on bass, Mike Borden on drums, Zach Wilde on guitars. However, due to various circumstances, e.g., the guitarist had just rejoined the lineup, only the bassist got songwriting credits in 3 songs. Everything else was written by external collaborators. Notable figures include former Black Sabbath keyboardist Jeff Nichols, Mick Jones of Foreigner, Andy Sturmer of Jellyfish, Ozzy's own former guitarist Joe Holmes, and producer Tim Palmer. As you can understand, this strongly affects the album's cohesion, despite the excellent playing performance of the trio behind the singer. For me, the best tracks are the awesome opener Gets Me Through, the excellent grunge-like Junkie, the very good Alive, especially in the chorus, and the album's closer, Can You Hear Them? As for the two ballads, Dreamer and Running Out of Time, they're not bad, but personally, I prefer the ones he did in the 80s. In the other tracks, I feel a bit bored and sense an Ozzy, just going through the motions. I would say the album marks the beginning of a trend that would unfortunately continue for many years. The albums seem like a byproduct of the other things the singer and his family are involved in, rather than the other way around. It's like they don't have his full attention and they don't hold the same significance for his career that they did until then. So I would say that
Fall, drunk and acting a fool.
another album traditionally considered bad that has been subjected to the scorn and derision of many metal fans over the years. Machine Head, who gave us a groove metal we could love with Burn My Eyes in 1995. Don't forget they come from the cradle of thrash, the Bay Area of San Francisco, and based on that, had reached the point of becoming the new superstars of the metal scene, had stooped to playing cheap, run-of-the-mill new metal. But, as I've often said in these videos, let's see if that was really the case. If we listen to the opening track Bulldozer, we'd say no. But if we listen to the next three, White Knuckle Blackout, Crashing Around You, Kick You When You're Down, we see dark clouds gathering in the sky. Rapping vocals, bouncy rhythms, aggression without a reason, and third-rate teenage whining. A recipe that will be repeated in a section of Blank Generation, but thankfully, that's as far as it will go. The remaining tracks continue to have new metal influences, although it's much more Slipknot's new metal than Limp Bizkit's. Still, some heavy hitters pop up in between, Trephination, The Crazy Silly American High, or the eponymous closer, to remind us what band we're dealing with. I would ultimately say it's still much more of a groove metal album than anything else, or what I read somewhere. That it's new metal if it was played by a real metal band, an opinion I agree with. And once again, I'll say that the album is too long and not justified by the quality of the tracks. Also that, no, it's not as bad as its reputation suggests. Back at the day, though, the album was a complete failure. The band had a bad breakup with Roadrunner Records, changed guitarists, and returned with the legendary metal hammering of Through the Ashes of Empires.
Generation of the dark, watch their lives decay.
If you notice, the rating for this album on Rate Your Music is worse than that of Risk. When the band went in to record it at the end of 2012, it had the same lineup as their previous album, a record of sorts for Megadeth and our friend Dave Mustaine, as this hadn't happened since 1997. Despite the lineup changes, the band had found a steady rhythm in the albums of the so-called New Era, meaning after their temporary disbandment and return, in 2004 to 2005. The album they released after might not have reached the peaks of the past, but they were aggressive enough and kept the band's identity and its relationship with thrash alive. So I'd say we were surprised when we heard the band, practically out of nowhere, choose a hard rock, radio-friendly path on this release, without any reason for it. We didn't have any discussions with Metallica members about risks, nor any attempt by the band to boost sales. I think Dave is smart enough to realize that this ship had sailed long ago. Regarding the tracks now, I'll start by saying that Dave's vocals are perhaps in their worst shape I can remember. Okay, he was never a great singer, but here they are truly annoying. From there on, Kingmaker doesn't even try to hide its copying of Children of the Grave in the verse, while the title track is essentially simple 80s arena rock. The chorus of Burn takes the cringe level to unbelievable highs. Built for War is a bit better, at least it's aggressive, The next three songs are boring hard rock, disguised as booming heavy metal, with an exception made for the aggressive break in the middle of Dance in the Rain. To the Blackest Crow has country influences, which makes it interesting because it's simply different. Forget to Remember is nothing more than simplistic glam metal, especially with its melodic guitar riff. In Don't Turn Your Back, they once again remember the sound that made them famous and give us perhaps the best track on the album, with incredible soloing from Chris Broderick. Overall, the guitarist solos are a highlight of the album, maybe the only one.